give me fuel, give me fire, give me that which I desire. Ooh.
Okay guys, I've been wanting to do this video for a while. I want to do this video on stage racing. We're into it a year and a half into stage racing, and I want your guys' thoughts on this. So in the comments below, I want you to tell me what you think of the stage racing in NASCAR. Is it a yay or a nay? Is it good for the sport? Is it bad for the sport? Has it improved the sport? How's it affected NASCAR ratings? How's it? A lot of things involved around the stage racing. So I just want to get your guys' input on this with the stage racing. Now, the stage racing started last year in 2017 Daytona 500. So let's look back at last year. Now, last year, Martin Truex Jr. kind of really won this championship, not only by winning races. I mean, he definitely earned his way there, but all these stage points accumulated over to the playoffs. So whenever they got to the playoffs, Truex actually had one race he could have just gave away. He could have just set out a race and not even raced it and still advanced to the next round. That's how many stage points he had, along with the playoff points. That's what I mean, because with the stage points, there's different ways you win stages. You get points, one bonus point for the playoffs, and if you win the race, you get 5 playoff points. So with what he accomplished last year, was he built up enough points to where whenever they went to the first round of the playoffs, he knew, I think it was 60-some points or something like that. He knew that going into that stage one, round one of the playoffs, he knew he was going to advance to round two because he just had enough to advance. So once he got by that without having to use any, once they got down to Talladega, in places where a lot of people have concern, loses that, he got to the point to where he's like, hey, we're at Talladega, I got all these playoff points and stuff, so if I do have a blown engine or something happens, a big wreck, I can give this race away and still advance. So that is the importance of these points, because over the past years NASCAR has changed. They've done a lot of stuff with the chase formats, and even if you go all the way back to the days where they wasn't stage points or playoff points, you know, back in you was rewarded 5 points for leading the lap or whatever, but the winner wasn't really awarded points. So that has changed NASCAR completely over the past year and a half with this system. Now, what I want to talk about is, do I think the stage points and the playoff points is good for NASCAR? I do agree with rewarding the winner of the race with the playoff points. I do agree with that. And it has made it interesting. Like this past weekend at Sonoma, this past weekend, you've seen a lot of drivers like Truex, Harvick, and them. You know, they have already accumulated so many points, so they're like, you know, let's run for the win. So they pit with 3 laps to go at the end of the stages and give up that 1 playoff point and 10 points for the race stage. So that enabled the other drivers to get points, because there's a lot of drivers from like 12th through 18th trying to get as many little points as possible to get into the playoffs. I do agree with this system in certain ways. Now, the ways I don't agree with this system is I think certain racetracks has hurt the racing. because a lot of racetracks you go to, it's got these stages in them. It kind of changes the complex of the race, because a lot of people are look at it like this, saying, hey, we might be running in 15th place, but we know there's going to be a caution coming out here in 10 laps. If they are a caution coming out here in 10 laps, what do? Do you stay out and try to get the points, or do you pit so you can be up front? That's where I think it's taken away from, say, somebody who's raced hard to try to get up front and run in the top 2 or 3. They may end up after the stage falling back to 15th themselves. That's the only thing that I look at and say, hey, maybe you all may think I'm crazy, but at the end of the stage, give the points to the people who did finish top 10, but reline them up the way they should be relined up. That way, if you fought hard to get up front, you're not going to have to fight hard to get back up, because with the aero package and stuff, it's so hard to pass. There's a lot of different little areas and stuff they can try in this situation. I think a lot of the tracks we go to may have too less stage points, or maybe too much. Sonoma this past weekend, we had 3 stages, 25, 25, 60. Personally, in my opinion, I think that 25 is too short of a stage, because fuel was not an issue. I'm thinking maybe they should have moved these stages up a little bit to where it was right on the edge, to where, say, somebody could make it on fuel, or everybody had to pit, and change things up a little bit with the stage, because everybody on the internet is complaining about this. It's like saying, whenever they first made the stage points, it's like saying, we want people to race hard every lap, every stage to get these points. When they got drivers dropping off the track and don't even care about the stage points. They're like, hey, we got 3 or 4 wins, maybe even 5. We're guaranteed to go in these playoffs. We're going, some of them, 2 or 3 of them, guaranteed to make it by the first 2 rounds. So I think that there's definitely some looking in to do if they're going to keep this system going the way they got it, to try to change some things around. Now, I've been really thinking about on this, and just trying to make a video to explain how I feel about it. Now this year, it by itself, Kyle Busch has 197 stage points with 5 stage wins. Well, them 5 stage wins relates to 5 playoff points. Okay, not to go with his wins, because he gets 5 for winning the race. So he's accumulating all these points to get in there. He actually really is earning his way into the chase, and probably the Final 4 at Miami. So Brad Keselowski, who hasn't won a race this year, has 176 stage points. He's really consistent. He really finishes up there, but he's got 4 stage wins, which means he only has 4 playoff points. Now, all that hard work to get 176 stage points is equal to 4 playoff points. And to me, 4 playoff points going into the chase is not that long. So it's like all that hard work for them to finish in the top 10 every week is not paying off there. So that's the way you can look at it this way. Now, Kevin Harvick, on instance, who has the 5 victories, even though one of them did get took away, but he does have 8 stage wins, which is almost equal to 2 races, so wins. So he is really racking up these stage points and playoff points. And Martin Truex Jr. has 3 stage wins, but he has 3 victories. So that leaves him with 18 playoff points. That's almost half a field. So by the time we get to the playoffs, I expect him to have 30. I'd say around 30, or close to a full race, I'm guessing in the area. And that's what these guys are shooting for. Now, Denny Hamlin, for instance, he's got only 94 stage points and 2 stage wins, which he won one this past week at Sonoma. So a lot of people are really struggling. Jimmy Johnson, 0 stage wins, 68 stage points. So Jimmy is actually running a little better lately, but he don't have that much accumulation. Ricky Stenhouse them down there, and sometimes AJ Allmendinger getting that one playoff point, but that one playoff point he got don't mean nothing if you don't make the playoffs. So them points do mean a lot in the stages. Now let's go to the standings here and see how this stage points will benefit this. Okay, now Kyle Busch has a 72 point lead over Kevin Harvick in the overall point system. So Kyle Busch has really got to look at these stage points and say, hey, I have to stay ahead of Kevin Harvick. And the reason why I express this is if he wins the regular season championship, that's 15 more playoff points, which would pretty much just about guarantee him and Kevin Harvick into that Final Four, because they're going to have so many points that it's just going to equal up. So, now Barrett Keselowski's in 4th place, 142 points out. But like I said, again, he don't have that many playoff points. So he is really not guaranteed. Even though he's high in the points, one bad race and he really hasn't gained anything. So it's really is, these stage points are really making the NASCAR season. And wins are so important to come by. If you look at the cutoff line here, I got Ricky Stenhouse in 16th, but that don't matter because Austin Dillon won one race and he's in the playoffs. That's another thing I think NASCAR needs to look at. I really truly believe, I don't think just because you win a race, you should be guaranteed into the playoffs. Now, I think if you win a race and you're in the top 16 in points, yeah, you're guaranteed in. But you take a look at Austin Dillon, who's 18th in points right now. He is in the playoffs, but you got Chase Elliott, who don't have a win. He's not guaranteed in, but he is running so much better. Chase has got 411 points. Austin Dillon has got 413. That's almost a 100-point gap there. That proves Chase Elliott has drove harder and worked harder to try to get these points. In my opinion, should be in the chase over Austin Dillon. Maybe that's something in the future they can look at and say, hey, yeah, you can win a race, but that's not going to guarantee you in the playoffs. I truly believe you need to be in that top 16 in points with a win to get in. Even AJ Allmendinger, if he hadn't blew up an engine, shifted gear there, blew it up, if he would have won that race, he's 23rd in points. Now, to somebody that's actually sitting halfway through the field and they won a race, should they be in the playoffs? They're definitely not an all-star. I mean, they're definitely not competitive every week. But just because they snuck in that win shouldn't really necessarily mean they should be in the playoffs. So I think the chase point, or the playoff points and the stage points need to be kind of redone a little bit towards say, hey, if you're in that top 16, even though you don't have a win and you got 300 more stage points than say a guy does have a win who got lucky on fuel mileage or something like that, I think they need to look at that situation. Now, to win a stage, you get one playoff point, and then in the top 10 positions, if you finish 10th, you get 1 point, 9th, you get 2, and so on. so on as you go up to the list there. So if I may, obviously we're going to have about 6 to 7 drivers get in on this playoff points, or I mean stage points, because you ain't going to see, but let's see, we got 6 winners through, a little over halfway through. We got 9 races or 10 to go to the playoffs, so I'd say out of the next 10 races, Harvick, Truex, and Busch will win at least 6 or 7 out of the 10. So we could possibly see 8 to 9 winners before the playoffs begin. So that's going to give us, like I said, around 6 to 7 drivers that did not win and will make it. But now if Austin Dillon is still stuck around 18th, 20th place in points, I just personally don't feel like he deserves to be in that playoffs just because he won that one race. And somebody that's 16th and it's got 154 more points than him accumulated through the year, I would say they deserve it over it because they're more consistent and more competitive. It's just something I think NASCAR should look into. So I would like for you guys to comment below and tell me what you think of the playoff system. Like I said, we're only a year and a half into it. And I know this year we're going to Indianapolis for the final race before the playoffs, and that was just a deal to try to get more than 4,000 people in the stands, but I don't think it's going to help them much. But we'll see. I don't really see Indianapolis as a track to where you could see an upset winner. I still see the same guys. If you remember correctly from last year, Kyle Busch, Martin Truex was 10 seconds ahead of everybody else in the whole field, so until they wrecked each other and took each other out. But that's just my opinion on that ordeal. And Paul Menard's sitting 17th. Now he is ahead of Austin Dillon by about 20 points or so. And personally, I think Paul Menard has had a lot better year than Austin, even though Austin got lucky in one Daytona. If I had to pick, I would say Paul Menard deserves to be in that chase besides Austin Dillon. But there's some cats. William Byron's running 20th. He's running consistent over his next 10 races. He could sneak up in there and get in there. Like I said, it's going to be open. Eric Almirola's going to make the chase because he's just way too consistent. Kyle Larson's going to make a chase, even though he's 9th. But he's Kyle Larson's kind of got a team right now that, like I said earlier, I don't think they're backing him up at great, and it's just the focus ain't there. They're too inconsistent. I think he'll win a race if it's in the right situation, but he'll be in there. Ryan Blaney will be in there. Jimmy Johnson will be in there. Chase Elliott, he's 13th, but he's just so close to that bubble area. The question is, will Chase, can he go without having these next 10 races? He can't mess up. He's got to stay consistent. 3 or 4 bad races could knock him out. So, I mean, he's got to really focus there. Ryan Newman's sitting 22nd. He's got 420 behind. And Ricky Stenhouse is 350. So, it's going to take 3 or 4 good races for him and 3 or 4 bad for Ricky. So, it's going to be interesting coming down this. But I just want you guys to let me know what you think about this stage racing. It's just a video I've been wanting to do for a long time. And what tracks could we change these at? Should we shorten some of these stages? Should we say, hey, some of these tracks, let's just cut it down to one stage? Like especially the 400-mile races, because they're so short anyway. Let's just cut the race in half. Say halfway, there's your stage 1. People get their points, and then we'll race another half. That way, there'll be longer race runs, and fuel mileage will come into play, and tires, saving your tires, and just a lot of different strategies. I mean, there's different ways I think can make racing better, because a lot of these guys are banking on this stage ending process, just like Martin and Kevin did at Sonoma. They could care less about them 10 stage points. It was like, yeah, we're going for the win, we're in. And that was the whole purpose of NASCAR doing this, saying, hey, every lap matters, every stage matters. But it seems like once a driver gets a win or two in them, they're like, well, we're in the playoffs. Who cares about the stage points now? So maybe they can tweak it a little bit. I think they need to fix it to where that if you do win a race, don't mean you're guaranteed into the playoffs. I think it should be, you've got to be consistent. You need to be in that top 16 in the points when the chase begins. That will make the drivers drive harder. So like Austin Dillon's 18th right now. And they need to push that team to get him in that 16th position so he can make the playoffs. That's just my opinion on it. I think that would make it a little better racing. But that's my take on it, guys. And so leave the comments below. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And I'll get my video out for the Race Picture Chicagoland coming up here soon. So anyway, you guys have a good one, and we'll see you guys next time.